one point in this movie, so a character says, "This isn't like a horror film you've ever seen." I've got to respectfully disagree. This is like every haunting house movie you've ever seen. We are talking about Anomaly, written and directed by Webster Batista. So what's the story? Well, we have this young family that are moving into a new home. They think it's their dream home. However, this house is home to a malevolent spirit that seems to be intent on attacking the family. And as the film progresses, the attacks get more intense. Can they get help from the police? Can they get help from the church? Is anyone able to help this family in need? Well, you have to watch the movie to find out. This is a very, very low budget movie. It's clearly influenced by films like The Conjuring, so much so I feel like they've actually taken scenes from that movie and just kind of remade them in this movie. Let's talk about positives and negatives first of all. Let's go with the positives. So I've got to say, one thing that stood out for me with this movie was the sound. I thought the sound here was quite good. They do a good job of making some good effects of kind of the sound effects and music as well. The score here, I think, is pretty good. There are a couple of occasions when they almost go OTT with the sound effects. For example, we have a scene where like a baby stroller kind of comes across the screen, and there's got this ghostly baby that's crying. It's a little bit too loud. It almost seems like it's clearly ADR'd. But nonetheless, I thought it actually does ramp up the kind of the spookiness, the kind of creepiness factor, and kind of maybe makes up for kind of the lower budget. I will say it's kind of nice to see a film where we have this kind of supernatural entity that is so aggressive. Normally with these kind of type of movies, you have, people going to the house, the supernatural stuff is relatively subtle, first of all. Then we have, people who don't believe them. Then we have the police character comes in and then nothing happens. Not in this movie. Pretty much everyone is attacked straight away. When we get visitors come into the house, they're definitely ghosts here, things like that. So that I kind of quite like. It's a refreshing change of pace and maybe avoids that kind of cliche that we've seen in kind of a lot of these kind of like sort of ghostly horror films. And I've got to say, despite its low budget, I did think the kind of the cinematography here and the kind of the technical side, camera use, lighting, was all done to quite a good standard. But now for the negatives. And there's one big one, and I apologise to anyone this kind of affects, but I've got to say it. The acting here is some of the worst I've ever seen, I've got to say. It is the equivalent of nails on a chalkboard in places. This acting is absolutely atrocious. Really, really kind of off-putting, I've got to say. And it doesn't help the dialogue that these guys are saying is so badly written as well. So trite, so cliche, and it seems written off the fly in a lot of cases. We have a scene, for example, where we have this priest that comes in that's got a kind of weird sort of Japanese haircut, kind of samurai haircut. Don't know what's going on there. But anyway, he's going to say in this, exorcism chant or whatever, and it just sounds like he's making off on the fly. I swear in one thing he says a bunch of stuff, then goes, "Oh, whatever." Weird. Very, very odd dialogue here. This film also relies far too heavily on jump scares. Now, if you like jump scares, then great. You'll kind of get out of this movie quite a lot because there's a hell of a lot of them. But it's a cheap trick, and I feel it can work, and it does work maybe a couple of places, but for the most part, it is kind of annoying, and they go way too over the top with it. Do we see anything on screen? A little bit, and there are a couple of okay uses of effects here, but there's also some terrible ones. The very first shot that we have on screen is kind of this family in the car and with horrible green screen, so some of the visual effects are a little bit lacking as well. The other thing that really irritated me here is the ending. Now, I'm not talking about the stinger, there's like a little stinger at the end here, but the actual conclusion of the story, it almost kind of wraps up really quickly, and they tell you a bunch of stuff, and it just comes out of nowhere. It almost seems like they didn't finish the film, and they had to kind of like quickly just film this kind of last scene to wrap it up. That's what it actually feels like, because it doesn't make sense, in my opinion, and it really just comes out of nowhere, and there's a bit of a left turn. Overall, if you like low-budget haunting films, then you may want to check it out. For me, this was a below-par movie. It wasn't a complete train wreck, but definitely one I feel that the negatives outweigh the positives on this one. So I'll give this movie a 4 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.